What's going on, boys? Thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers. Subscribe to our Patreon free to stay in the loop. Arm yourselves, life stuff. I think this will be a quick one. Not an entire system for dealing with grief, but instead some steps I've taken and how I'm dealing with and feeling about grief today, now that the dog is dead. Firstly, putting time into shadow development is helpful. Not just for asserting yourself or connecting with yourself, understanding yourself, but also for difficult emotional regulation. It's like those balancing chambers in ships and submarines. The more dark nooks and crannies of your soul that you open up and access, the more space you can put emotions, or the more buffers you have to weather emotions. As usual, the more you connect with your shadow, the more inclined your mute but expressive and concerned for you and with the world passenger is inclined to help you out. Grief would be a lot more difficult to deal with if I hadn't developed these bastard muscles. Instead of collaborating with painful emotions to topple you, they instead work with you to root you in place. And going into this was odd compared to the way I would normally go into this sort of emotional state, because I feel different these days. Big internal, emotional, spiritual restructuring in the last 2 years. Instead of feeling like I'm walking into a meat grinder, I instead feel like I'm walking into a minefield. And that has been how these sadder emotional feelings have felt in the last year, maybe. The difference being this time, I didn't immediately step on a landmine. At least not yet. When you're dealing with shadow development, I think there are two levels. There's the mechanical level and there's the interpersonal level. The mechanical side was pretty well sorted out, but on the interpersonal level this go round, I didn't feel totally alone. As in, there's been this reassuring sense walking through a minefield is not certain doom. There is a way to get out of this or get through this. And I was at work today while the dog was being put down. And as I am treading lightly and carefully through this emotional state, I know I am now capable of dealing with this in a way that is not shutting down, breaking down, but I'm really nervous it's going to come out as aggression. Some people have been pulling some shit, trying some shit, and I'm going in the front door today terrified that I'm going to do something paternal. Bait a fight and then get really ugly and deal with this sad emotion that explosive angry way. And fortunately, that's not what happened. I think sorrow, and especially grief is like a doubled pain response responding to powerlessness, particularly powerlessness inflicted by the circumstances of your mortality. Or rather, somebody else's. You're hurting because you're powerless. You're hurting because someone you care about is or now was powerless. You were powerless to do anything, and they were powerless to survive it. Ergo, I think power expressions and partaking in Uncle Ted's power process is a good way not to beat sorrow and grief, because ultimately you can't beat powerlessness, but not to let yourself feel wrought by it. I don't remember the exact Berserk quote, but it's something like hatred is the place a man goes when he can't deal with sorrow. And they frame that, or I'm remembering they frame that, like it's this bad thing, universally bad thing, and I don't think it's always a universally bad thing, but there's a flip side to this. There is another power place you can go when you're feeling sad, when you're grieving, when you're feeling powerless. Today, at work, my instincts told me it's time to hand out the Christmas gifts. I know nobody wants Christmas gifts. I know it's early, but right now something is telling me I should. And that's what I did. Gift giving is a weaponized love language strategy that's always effective. You should always, not regularly, but incorporate small gift giving into your MO. But it's also fun to do, despite how negatively people tend to react when you give them gifts, even when it's appropriate, for a holiday or something. Unprompted gift giving, as in giving gifts in a context in which you are not paying somebody back for a service rendered, seems to make people either uneasy or aggressive. And I rarely buy anything expensive. It's very little stuff so people don't feel or don't think I'm trying to make them obligated to give me something back. This is an inexpensive, considering the holidays you are on the mind, thing. And some people were mildly happy to receive something mild, but others were mildly negative. And this is why shadow development is important, not just for developing your ability, your capacity for villainy, but also to understand or to use positivity more effectively. If I hadn't done any shadow development, then those reactions would have really upset me. And in the past, they have. I don't remember, or I don't know if you remember, a little under 2 years ago, I gave someone a thank you gift for dealing with some shit. And the reaction was really dismissive. And at that time, that was really upsetting to me. But here, I felt something and those emotions went somewhere, but it wasn't that sort of negativity. And I needed to think about what happened. After thinking about it, what's happened is I have just expressed power and received validation. Power is the ability to do, not just to do bad or to do good. In fact, with shadow development, these moral tones don't even matter. In this instance, it's quotes good, but removing that tone, what has happened is someone was an object that I acted upon. And your dismissive attitude validates my hating you. I pay you $6 and you accept it, and in return, I get confirmation I'm in the right for telling you to go fuck yourself, or at least thinking it. You don't just put yourself out there and interact with people regularly to stay focused and remember why you hate people. You try to do good for people so you can get the clearest confirmation. Not only can you hate people, but you should. We're getting a little off track, but in essence, doing good or doing bad doesn't matter. And it's not hypocritical to swap between them. They're both power statements, and the more powerful you can feel by wielding power, by acting upon an object, the better you'll be able to deal with these powerless sphere emotions. like grief. The next thing I did was not tell anybody outside YouTube. And on YouTube, people don't actually listen to you. I think in terms of entertainment or people listen to, all they're looking for or all they want is to hear words they like, organized in a way they like, spoken by a voice they like, or coming out of a face they like. The ideas or what anyone is saying doesn't really matter. Does this conform to what I conform to? If it does, then it's great and I like it. If it doesn't, then it's bad, I hate it, it needs to be destroyed. All communication is a performance structured to appeal to one set of conformity and to spite another set of conformity. Nothing you say actually matters for what you're saying. All that matters is the words you use and how you say them. Anyway, normally, not telling anyone how you're feeling or what you're dealing with would be considered bottling it up or repression, and repression is dangerous. However, I think you need to think about these power statements or power expressions not as just expressing power, but also as places to put your emotions. I feel a little repressed, but I don't feel totally repressed. And that's because you can, and probably should, talk through your emotions, not by talking through them, but with actions. And this is tricky because this doesn't always work. You'll hear people say, you should get your anger out by punching a heavy bag or something. That and things like it never really did anything for me. At most, it would vent the smallest amount of steam. And that's it. But if you find the correct action channels to channel these emotions through, it is possible to get them out healthily. As in, without words, you have dealt with them, you have pushed these emotions through your system without trying to talk to people. Because in my experience, talking to people never makes anything feel better. And if anything, it's going to make you feel worse because people smell vulnerability and then they spite you when you're in one of these states. They wait until you need or think you need their help emotionally, and then they kick your legs out from underneath you. Fuck them. There are other ways to deal with this. Now, I'm not at a point I understand what separates a good action channel from a bad action channel in the effective and ineffective respectively sense, but they do exist, and I think shadow development has something to do with that. I would have never thought to bust out the Christmas presents early, but that's what my instincts recommended, and that's what worked. And then the next strategy I'm finding some success with is mantling some other people's responsibilities in hard times like this. That might sound counterintuitive, because how can you help deal with other people's problems or emotions when you're having trouble dealing with your own, or you can't even get a handle on your situation? But you need to remember the way you feel doesn't matter. And that is the case, but if you apply that statement or internalize that statement and then stop, do nothing else, you'll burn apart from the inside. Instead, understanding the fact your emotions don't matter, and then committing yourself to helping people with their emotions or their situation making sure they're okay while nobody else is ensuring you're okay and you probably aren't okay, ends up making you feel okay and making you feel competent enough to be watching out for yourself. Because again, let's say you are rot and you let yourself be rot with negative emotions and that collapsing state, and you're reaching out for help. What are people going to do? They're going to step on your hand, break your fingers, and then take a hammer to your head. Fuck that. You're so solid, you'll be standing guard over your own corpse when you're dead. Thinking about and trying to meet others' needs helps you realize how little your needs actually matter. Someone needs to be cognizant and on guard anyway. Better it's you. But thus far, those are my new grieving strategies for a new outlook that have been working well enough so far. I can feel I'm not out of the minefield yet, but I am not coming apart at the seams, rattling apart, destroyed. And then, quick update on the DayZ server while we're here, which is actually another thing that's been good in the last week for dealing with negative emotions, is it's hard to cry and feel sad when you are screaming at your PC and wanting to burn people alive over technical problems. I'm swapping it over to public or no password to see what that looks like, see what sort of people we get in. And then in terms of mechanics, I refined it a lot. Now it feels a lot more like early PUBG and an MMO. The gameplay is a lot faster, but still slow, quiet, and pensive enough for my tastes. If your hands are empty, you can search certain storage containers to get extra rolls on loot, so even if you spawn somewhere that's already been rifled through, you can still get a shot at getting some shit. Zombie spawns are denser, and they'll surprise you. I got jump scared out in the middle of the woods. More generated missions and a better variety of them. More traders/trader towns. There's some factions. There is a large horde of zombies, and I forget what they're called, Dark Masters or some shit, that roam around the map, which is kind of an end game goal to throw yourself at. There are also more bandits, and there's this neat feature now. It's not like there is one sort of bandit AI and they spawn in one spot. Now, there are bunches of different sorts of bandits with different characteristics. Like there are shamans, for instance, that can work around zombies without getting mauled, which is distressing. But wherever you are, if you stay in one place too long and make too much noise, eventually someone will notice and come looking for you. And it's neat. There's this little notification that alerts you to the fact someone is in your area now and looking for you. So there are actual threats and they actually pursue you. So that hustle is a little more exciting. It makes you want to get stuff faster, and it makes you more afraid of losing it because there's a good chance you will lose it. We talked about that 2010's Far Cry 2 Halo Reach SWATO thing. We managed to make that, basically. Information is in the description, but I've been playing it a lot more, and I've been enjoying it now. When I first started up the server, I tried to make it accessible. Now that we have stopped focusing on accessibility, which I should have done from the beginning, it's a lot more fun. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.